Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon 301.10. Today we're going to talk a little bit about cathartic whipping. Honestly, cathartic whipping's not really my thing, but it's an important part of whip play. I think every whip thrower should know a little bit about the concept. In chapter 17 in my book Whips in the Dungeon, Singletail Techniques for Play, I have a whole chapter devoted to cathartic whipping, and Master Malik of Tulsa and Slave Linda of Atlanta several years back did a wonderful cathartic whipping presentation at South Plains Leatherfest in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and their reflective journal thoughts are captured in chapter 17 of my book. So I would encourage you, if you haven't read that, to check that out. But just briefly, cathartic whipping, if you think of a normal whip scene, if I have a heavy strike, I'm going to read body language, I'm going to allow the whip catcher to breathe and process that energy, and then I'm going to begin again. In cathartic whipping, you want to take all the breath out of that scene, and you want to build up the whip catcher, and then once the whip catcher's build up, to continually provide a heavy strike on every single beat of the music if you're throwing to music, or every single throw. And cathartic whipping needs to be extensively negotiated. Ideally, it's between a true masochist and a true sadist. And I recommend that there be a spotter or a referee, if you will, that's been part of the negotiations, and they're a third party that's involved in the scene that is given some parameters around which they might judge whether that seed needs to continue or needs to stop. Because many times a masochist that gets deep in the throes of subspace, that's heavily involved in pain, is also going to not be able to verbalize or say when they've reached that limit, and sometimes you just need a referee involved in that type of a scene. So several things that might be negotiated. One would be blood. I won't say that there always has to be blood involved when you have cathartic whipping, but many times you will have a blood scene involved. The other thing to consider is the purpose for a cathartic whipping scene. It oftentimes leads to almost a spiritual experience on either the whip thrower's part or the whip catcher's part. Sometimes it results in a healing and could be done for healing. I'm not a psychiatrist, so I don't want to get involved in the psychology behind a cathartic scene, but that oftentimes is the end result. It results in healing and a spiritual, almost out-of-body experience. I'll leave you to further explore cathartic whipping on your own and do some reading, and certainly check out the chapter in my book on cathartic whipping. Today's keyword is third position.